Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery who I've always quite liked, but for a period of time they did kind of disappear for a little bit, and it was only about 3 months ago that I managed to get a hold of another one of their beers to review for you, so it's nice to see them back. But for this review we have a little bit of a special beer that I'm very curious to try. For this one then we are going to head up towards Stockholm, although they do brew their beers in Gothenburg these days from what I understand, and we're having a look at another beer from Mohawk Brewing. So this one is the 10th anniversary IPA called X, and it's a double West Coast IPA coming in at 8.5% ABV. So really curious to see how this one turns out. As I say, this is a brewery that I always used to enjoy, and hopefully this turns out to be another nice beer. I'm having to angle the can on this one because I've got a light just behind me there and it's reflecting off the kind of gold cross on the can. Actually, it's annoying when breweries make their cans very shiny because it doesn't work well with the camera, but if the beer's good we're not going to complain too much about that. But like I said, I've had some very good experiences with Mohawk Brewing before, and when I first encountered these guys back in like 2015, 2016, it was all about the imperial stouts that they were doing, so it is nice to try a few different styles from them, and hopefully this turns out to be a very nice beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. Nice to review their 10th anniversary beer on the channel too. So let's see how we get on. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Mohawk Brewing Company before. No doubt there will be some more at some point in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Mohawk Brewing then, on to my brewery notes. So Mohawk Brewing Company, they describe themselves as a virtual brewery, which is essentially a gypsy brewery, and the company was founded by Stefan Gustafsson. So he started home brewing back in the 1980s because he was a poor student, and also because the range of beers in Sweden at the time was very poor actually. But he worked for Grebbestads Brewery for a period of time, and then he started importing beers into Sweden as well. But this evolved to become Wicked Wines, which was officially founded back in 2000 along with Andreas Felt, and he was later inspired to form Mohawk Brewing Company on the back of that in 2010 because he saw the success that the gypsy brewers like Mikkeller were having over in Copenhagen. And this company is of course co-owned by Wicked Wines as well. But they've brewed their beer in a variety of different places, including the Prof Brewery, which is in Lochiste Heifte, just out to the, I think it's the east of Ghent, down in Belgium, and they've also brewed their beers at Coppersmiths Brewery and at Lake Brewery in Sweden as well. But for a while he was brewing his beers at Vega in Gothenburg, but when they expanded they didn't have any room for gypsy brewers and things, so they actually went for about 18 months without any production of their own, and that lasted until August of 2017 when they started brewing their beers at Spike Brewery. So in 2018 they managed to produce around 30,000 litres of beer. The plan for 2019 was to hit around 60,000 litres of beer, and as of February 2020, when I'm reviewing this particular beer for you, they've produced around 170 different types of beer. So as I said, in my experience this brewery were always very good when it came to high alcohol beers, the imperial stouts, and I'm sure they had a couple of imperial browns from them at one point as well. So they were very good on the dark end of the spectrum. I hadn't had so much in the way of IPAs and things like that from them, but they do seem to be being a little bit more kind of prolific in this style now. But if they've got a regular brewing spot, then I think it will go pretty well from them, and hopefully they can get their own brewery at some point. I think that's the next step for them. But you know, if it's a sort of Wicked Wines operation, I'm guessing that Stefan is probably kind of occupied with things over there as well. But a really interesting little brewery, this one. They do some very good beers, and if you get the chance, I recommend that you have a go at some of their stuff. Like I said, the white, I'm sure it's called the Whiteout, their Imperial Stout that they release in the winter time, is always a little bit of a treat. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about Mohawk Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer Untappd and the Beer Advocate pages for more information on all the different beers that they've done. And you know, keep an eye on Systembolaget. They've always got new things coming out through the local and Småsigrid assortments at the start of every month. So yeah, check that out. But let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork once again before we open it up. There you can see it's got that typical kind of typographic, is that right to call it typographic? I don't know, but the Mohawk text and things that you always get on the beers is very, very nice. It also has a little bit of a text in Swedish on the side here, and it basically tells you about you know, basically what I've told you in the history of the video. You know, this was started as a sidearm of Wicked Wines, and you know, they wanted to make beers because there wasn't that much variety there. On this particular beer itself, it says that this one is a crazily hopped beer with the American West Coast, and it talks about how this was a recipe that he designed quite a while ago but never got the chance to release it until now. So he's calling it an extra IPA, but this is the first, and it says as well that this is the first time the beer came in production. So it arrives now, Mohawk X, the 10-year anniversary double IPA. So yeah, an 8.5% double West Coast IPA, this one, and I have to say I like the can of this. So I might either take the label off this one or I'll keep it, but there you can see on the side there is a special symbol for Mohawk Brewing Company there. But the reason the brewery is called Mohawk, I'm not sure of the exact reason behind it, but whenever you see Stefan Gustafsson, I've met him at Malmö Öl and Whiskey twice, I think it was. He's a very nice guy, but he's very distinctive. He's tall, he must be about 2 meters tall, and he's got a massive black mohawk, so you will recognise this dude when you see him, but go and talk to him. Very, very nice guy. So happy 10th anniversary to Stefan and Mohawk Brewing. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I love a good West Coast IPA, so I'm hoping that this one is kind of properly old school. We'll see how we get on with this, but if it's an old recipe, I'm guessing it will be. So yeah, just look at that. That looks lovely. So 8.5% beer, this one. Yeah, just balance the can again, and there we go. So as you can see with this beer, it's poured. If I hold the light up to this, it's a very light, it's got a very light hint of orange to it, but I find this one is mainly leaning towards the yellow end of the spectrum. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of the head, and I would say the head is just about a quarter finger, and it's kind of perfect white, but it's starting to fade away, be a very kind of thin foamy layer actually. But in terms of IPAs and their appearance, this one is a little bit lighter in colour than some of the ones you'll find from the West Coast, but as I've said in some of the other videos, I wonder if that's down to the fact they're probably using, rather than using the likes of the Turo and the you know, the crystal malt and things like that you'll get over in America, maybe they're using German malts and stuff, and of course it's usually the colour of the malts that actually gives you the colour of your beer, and of course that comes from the types of malts. But a really nice looking beer, this one. It's actually pretty clear. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see that there is a degree of transparency to this beer, but it looks very nice. So let's have a little look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Looks the part, so let's see how it smells. Oh yeah, that's pretty old school, I have to say. I think this, knowing what Mohawk are like, I think this one might be pretty damn good. So yeah, straight away with this one, you're going to notice the slightly stronger boozy note out of this. 8.5%. This isn't the heaviest of West Coast double IPAs that you're going to get. I mean, I've had some that have been, you know, 9% and all of this. So 8.5% is kind of in the middle of the road, I think, for the West Coast IPAs. I forget exactly what percentage the old hardcore IPA from Brewdog was, but back in the day, hardcore IPA was always one of my my favourite ones. But you can still get that as Mr. President in Tesco's back home in Scotland. Actually, it's just got a slightly different hop bill on it, I think. But for this one, it really reminds me of that to a degree. But I find this one a little bit lighter and crisp and more biscuity. So on the malt base, then you get that lovely kind of smooth, white bready, pale malty note out of the beer. And it's got a little bit of sweetness to it, so maybe there is a little touch of American malt in here. So I'm not sure about that, but there is definitely a bit of German smoothness to it as well, to be honest. You've got some sweet caramel in there. You've got a little bit of, you do have a little bit of that richer caramel. You can smell a bit of the booziness out of this. And I'm starting to notice that I notice this more with West Coast IPAs now, and I'm just wondering if that's because of the haze craze, and you have all of these, you know, it's more about the kind of creaminess and smoothness and then the juiciness and things. So I think when I go back and smell West Coast IPAs, I do wonder if it is, you know, if it's just the difference, it's just the kind of relativity of these two beers that make them, or these two beer styles, that makes them seem a bit different. But West Coast IPAs to me smell very boozy now in a way that they never used to. Interesting how your senses and your palate and stuff like that evolve over time, but a lovely kind of sweet caramel note coming out of this one. It's definitely got a bit of a kind of biscuity quality to it as well. Yeah, definitely a little bit of that McVitie's digestive kind of biscuity syrupy thing, little touch of graininess in there as well, but that's pretty much, in terms of malt bases, that's what you expect from a West Coast IPA. It's got a good little bit of dankness to it as well. On the green side of the hops, it really has that big floral note out of it. I don't know if I'd quite describe it as piney and resinous. There is a little bit of that to it, but I would say that it's more, it is more of a kind of big floral aromatic note that comes out of this one. There's a little bit of grassiness in there, also a wee bit of earthiness, but I really find this one quite kind of spicy and floral. In terms of the fruity side of things, where would we go with this one? To me, this one strikes me as being, it's got a little bit of the darker kind of tropical fruits to it. Yeah, it has got a little bit of a kind of grapefruity, passion fruity side of things. Could it be a bit of Simcoe that's in this? If it's an older recipe, I don't think it's going to have, you know, the likes of Mosaic or kind of Sabro and Idaho 7 and all of these things in it. Although Mosaic, in fairness, is not, it's a bit older now. I mean, Mosaic's been around for a little while actually compared to some of the other ones, and there is a degree of orangey note to this one as well, which of course back in the day would have always been Amarillo, or if you're on the Pacific it would have been like Waiiti or Pacifica or something like that. But yeah, there is a degree of oranginess to this one. It's got a bit of that darker grapefruity and passion fruity note to it as well. And there's maybe a wee touch of lime to this one, and of course when it's lime, it's either going to be Motueka from New Zealand, or it's going to be a little bit of Equinaut, but I'm not sure about that. There is just that limey note is very kind of subtle. I wouldn't make too much of that. Citra, if used in the right way, can give you a little bit of a lemon-limey character as well. If I was betting, I would say that I think it's probably Citra and either Amarillo or Mosaic that's in this one. I wouldn't be quite sure about that, but maybe it's the malt base that's based on an old recipe, because you can kind of swap hops very easily when it comes to beer. I think it's always about getting the malt balance right is a little bit more difficult than it comes to just kind of simply swapping hops. But yeah, a really nice aroma this one, a bit nostalgic, as I say. It reminds me of the good old hardcore IPA from Brewdog that I used to enjoy every so often back in my student days of chemistry in Aberdeen. So yeah, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one then, but let's get stuck into this. This one is the X 10th Anniversary Double West Coast IPA, 8.5% from Mohawk Brewing Co, headquartered in Stockholm in Sweden, but brewing their beers down in Gothenburg. Let's get stuck into this one. Sláinte, skål. Yeah, that's really nice. Very well balanced, I have to say as well. Where do we start with this then? This one, it's just a very nostalgic beer for me, this. It does have the big dankness and stuff that you want of the style. I mean, a few videos before filming this one, I had one from Stigberg. It's a West Coast IPA, and it just didn't have the bitterness that a West Coast IPA should have. And what I'll say about this one is, this isn't the kind of sweetest, it doesn't have the sweetest and oily mouthfeel rather, that you're going to get from some of the things like Sculpin and Torpedo and stuff like this. In some ways this reminds me of some of the German takes on the West Coast IPAs that you're going to get. There's a lot of the German breweries now, that even some of the older traditional ones are having a go at the West Coast IPAs, and of course the more modern craft breweries that you have down there now, like Frau Gruber and things, are doing the hazy IPAs. So this one, to me, it does remind me of some of the German IPAs that I've had actually, which is kind of interesting, because it's great down in Germany just now. You've got all these traditionally trained brewers having a go at these different styles, but this really reminds me of some of the things that I've had from the likes of Genstaller and the other one's going to my head, Camber Bavaria. It reminds me of these kind of beers actually, and Berliner Berg Brewery as well, or Berliner Berg, I forget the name, but this is really nice. Big thumbs up to Mohawk Brewing Company on this one. I like what they've done with this beer. It really is a little bit nostalgic. But I was saying a little second ago, I was saying that this one isn't one of the sweeter ones, but it does seem to take a little bit of time for the sweetness in the middle of the palate to build. But this one really is a kind of straight up European take on the West Coast IPA. But I've said this about numerous American takes on beer styles. The American beers are always sweeter, and the Americans have got a very, very big kind of sweet tooth, to be honest with you. But you know, this one is a little bit smoother and kind of more crisp, if you like. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this beer a little bit then. So at the middle of your palate, you can feel that nice kind of pale malty quality just blanket the middle of your tongue. It does get a little bit thicker over time. It becomes a bit more like a kind of white bready note, and if you go to the very centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of that sweeter kind of caramel note out of the beer. But I would say, as you move further out from that, it does become more biscuity. It is a little bit more like a kind of biscuity, syrupy, McVitie's digestive kind of thing. So it does. This one for me does lean more towards that biscuity sweetness rather than the big oily caramelly sweetness that you would get, for example, from Sculpin or Torpedo, or you know, some of the other West Coast IPAs that are out there on the American market. But I think it suits it. It really is a European take on a West Coast IPA, and for me it's all about getting that malt based balance with the big hoppy bitterness. But they have got a nice solid malt base in this one in my mind. So yeah, for me, on the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate you do have a little bit of earthiness there. As you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, it definitely gets a little bit more floral aromatic and quite spicy actually. I don't know if I would go as far as saying that this one is kind of piney and resinous. I think to me it just comes across as more kind of spicy and floral. Could it have a little bit of Columbus as the bittering hop? There's something about the spiciness in this beer that makes me wonder if Columbus is in here as a bittering hop. As you go round the front curve of the palate though, it's quite interesting. Right to the front corners of your tongue it's quite spicy and floral, but then round the front curve of your palate it's just a little bit lighter and more grassy. It makes the transition almost like that. But then behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. And again, this one's quite old school in that regard. So yeah, if you go towards the back of the oily bubble in this one, you do get some of those slightly darker grapefruity, passion fruity notes out of the beer. But then as you move further forward from it, it gradually becomes a little bit more juicy and soft and mangoey. And then again, as you reach the front part of your palate, you start to get the more kind of orangey notes out of this one. I'm pretty certain with this beer, just from the way it kind of comes across, I think there is a bit of Citra in this. I'm not sure whether there's maybe kind of Simcoe in there, and there is either Amarillo or Mosaic in this one, and just with the way the earthiness is in this one, and the way the oranges are, I'm more inclined to say that this is Amarillo that's in here, because Mosaic always gives you a distinctive bit of earthiness, and it can be quite a dark earthiness too. But I don't find that so much with this one. I think this, I've got a feeling that this might be Amarillo that's in here, and again, the other thing that might be backing that up is the fact that it's an older recipe, and potentially it's from a time where Amarillo wasn't used quite as much. But yeah, you know, it's always interesting to play guess the hops with these beers. I've got a feeling that this might be an Amarillo Citra double hopped kind of thing. But yeah, as a West Coast IPA, this is really nice. This is definitely hitting the spot. It's got the big hoppy dankness that you expect of this style, the big oily fruity notes, the malt base, like I say. It's a little bit lighter. It is definitely more of a kind of European take on the West Coast IPA. It's not quite as sweet as some of the American ones that you're going to get. You know, you usually get a big oily caramelly note with the American versions, but it's a really nice beer nonetheless, and I like this one. It really is a bit, pardon me, nostalgic, coming back to something like this. So a nice beer. It's a nice idea as well to celebrate your 10th anniversary, to kind of go back, take the IPA style back to what it was when you started. You know, these guys starting back around 2010, these IPAs were all the rage around then actually. I mean, I remember trying some of the Brewdog stuff back in like 2011 or something like that. So it is definitely cool to try something like this that gives you a little bit of a nostalgia trip. So thumbs up to Mohawk Brewing Company for bringing this recipe out of the closet, and or the cupboard rather. Need to speak proper English, not American English. Kudos to them for bringing this recipe up and putting it out for their 10th anniversary, and it's definitely a nice change from all the kind of hazy IPAs that are out there just now. Not that there's anything wrong with those, of course, but it is just nice to have a bit of variety, because there's so many breweries doing the hazy side of things now. In terms of the mouthfeel of this beer then, I'd say that this one is probably at the bottom end, the full-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. The mouthfeel is really oily in this one. It's not the most oily West Coast IPA that I've come across, right enough, but it does have a good little bit of oiliness to it. It does have a little bit of that kind of clean feel, and I think that's just to do with the Swedish water, right enough. But on the hoppy bitterness side of things, I think we're talking about 70 IBUs with this one. I've got a feeling there might be Columbus in this, just from the way that the spicy qualities come out in this is very, very nice. I mean, the more that I sit and linger on this beer, I do wonder if there might be a bit of Chinook in there, because you have got that darker grapefruity quality at the back of the oily side of your palate. So like I say, the fruits go from grapefruit to a sort of juicier mango, then to a more oily orange at the front of the tongue. The limey notes that I was picking out in the aroma really don't come out in the flavour. I should have said that earlier, but there is something that makes me wonder. It could be, it's either Columbus, or it might be both. It's either Columbus because of the spiciness, but there is just something that makes me wonder about Chinook now that I reflect on it a little bit. But yeah, big hoppy bitter quality to this beer. I think about 70 IBUs, and you've got a nice kind of smooth malt base there. It's not quite as sweet as some of the American ones that you'll come across, like I said, but it does have a wee bit of biscuity sweetness, and you've got that lovely big oily fruity character to it as well. But overall, a really, really nice take on the West Coast IPA. Definitely a bit more European in its take than American in some ways, even though the style originates over in America. A bit of a strange statement to make that, but a very nice kind of nostalgic beer for me to try this one. So thumbs up to Mohawk Brewing for this, and of course happy 10th anniversary to Stefan and the company in general. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the X 10th anniversary double West Coast IPA, or West Coast double IPA, whichever way round it's meant to go, from Mohawk Brewing Company, a gypsy brewery based in Stockholm but brewing their beers in Gothenburg here in Sweden. Try some of their beers if you get the chance. The likes of the Whiteout and Blizzard and things like that. All these winter imperial stouts that they do are always very, very nice, so make sure you check those out in sort of November, December kind of time. But they've got other beers that are very good as well. Don't just have a look at their dark stuff. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this. Thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Mohawk Brewing Company as well. We will definitely return to these guys over the next few weeks and months. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Check out my social media and I'll catch you guys very soon. If you want a good old school West Coast IPA, then have a go at this one. It would be nice to see this beer made a little bit more regularly, but I think it is just a one-off brew. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. The X10th anniversary West Coast Double IPA from Mohawk Brewing Company, Gypsy Brewery here in Sweden. Slanja, skål, cheers.